YouTube fan community of Montreal fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens, and we're here today to talk about Montreal's second full-length album, The Bedside Drama, a Petite Tragedy. So, this album for me is really special because when I got into Montreal, this was 2005 when I got into Montreal. At that time, they only had a handful of albums out. It wasn't like the plethora of records they have now because they've been a band for well over 20 years. We've got a lot to listen to now. At the time, Sun Landing Twins had either just come out or was coming out, which would have been like their humongous breakout record when they were on Polyvinyl Records, which they've been with since 2004 or 3. And so when you bought a record from them, they only had a certain amount to go back to. And at that time, they had changed rapidly, very fast. From 1997 to about 2005, it was like two different bands. Between members and sound and growth and songcraft, the whole 9 yards. And even from 2005 to now, it feels like a different band too. Kevin Barnes is so prolific, and the group of people he's played with over the years has changed up and down here and there a little bit, but the overall feel of the band has always been one that never stays the same twice, which is kind of cool. And for instance, with this record, a lot of people have overlooked this thing over the years as kind of tossing it off as being this cutesy little tweet pop thing, or not taking it seriously compared to their other works. But like I said, this was, I think, the third album I ever bought from them back in 2005 when I was first getting into them. And I liked the cover. I bought it because of the cover. I knew nothing about the music. You know, this was the days before YouTube where you couldn't really go sample records somewhere, or Spotify or Pandora, any of that stuff. Like, you saw the jacket on the online, and maybe Amazon had 30-second clips, but beyond that, you kind of winged it. So I remember going to Borders and buying the CD of this thing back in the day and instantly falling in love with it. And it's one of my favorite albums by them. And I feel like it deserves way more justice than it gets. It definitely deserves way more respect. So that's the whole point of this interview. Hey, how's it going? Review to talk about this thing, kind of showcase why it's such an important album for them, but also that it stands up on its own just as much as any of their other albums. So Montreal, if you're new to the game here, is a band from Athens, Georgia. Like I said, it's gone through many, many shifts over the years, but during this time in the mid to late 90s, they were part of what they call the Elephant Six Collective, the E6 Collective, which was all these great Athens groups, the Olivia Tremor Control, Apples in Stereo, Neutral Milk Hotel, Marshmallow Coast, and then eventually Montreal. And they all played on each other's records. They were kind of a very communal type of group. And you never know who might show up at one of their shows. And, you know, there's this great video of Montreal playing in 1998, I think at the 40 Watt in Athens. And all these other people come up on stage. You see Brian Poole, you see, you name it. It's very, very cool. I'm sidetracking here, but their first album definitely had more of a, I don't want to use the word electric feel to it, but it definitely had more of a punchier impact compared to this one, which is much more sadder, a little bit more downtrodden, and then way more introspective, I feel. Cherry Peel is a fantastic album. I love that one for sure. But this one, you know, I found an interview online with, I'm going to butcher this word, Broward, Palm Beach, New Times. It's this newspaper article I found from 2002, where Kevin talks about very briefly that this album was inspired by the girl who broke his heart, you know, the girl from Montreal who he named the band after. So this album is about that relationship, the very brief relationship that it was. And it's a concept album. It starts off with the initial feeling of falling in love with someone, or just the initial attraction of being like, whoa, who's that? And then meeting them, going on your first date, having your first kiss, having your first, like, actual relationship, getting married, going through the motions, maybe realizing you're not so good for each other, and then subsequently breaking up. So this album takes you on that journey. And instrumentally, it's pretty sparse. It's pretty bare bones. It's mostly acoustic guitar and drums and bass. There are flashes of horns, of bells, of whistles, of train, you know, choo-choo sound, the wooden block things. But overall, pretty sparse instrumentation for this album. But the chord changes on here, the lyrical content, the emotion, the atmosphere this whole thing creates is a fascinating listen. And just as much of a fascinating listen as Coquelicot or Hissing Fauna or Skeletal Lamping. I mean, any of those records, this one I really feel stands up with that. Because without those albums, without this album, we wouldn't have those for sure. Um, so at this point in the band, it's mostly Kevin. I know Derek probably played drums on this thing, and maybe Brian played bass, or maybe Kevin played bass, or this may have just been Kevin by himself. I'm not really sure who plays on this thing besides Kevin. um, and even a year or two after this thing came out, a lot of these songs weren't being played anymore at their shows in favor for the newer stuff at that time. So this album's always been kind of forgotten about. Honeymoon in San Francisco was reprised in the mid-2010s on their Snare Lustrous Doomings live album, which is really cool because they recorded a lot of that in San Francisco. So, you know, that was definitely special to have that song kind of come back to life. But, yeah, it's definitely an album that has been relegated to the, I don't need to hear that one kind of list, which is so sad because it's such a good album. Anyways, now that I've gotten that off my chest, we could talk about the songs here. So, One of a Very Few of a Kind is the first song on this thing. And I want to show you the insert here because this is so cool. Because having the CD for so long, you get this little tiny booklet. This thing is, you know, a nice, good-sized little poster here. Because there's no track information on the record at all anyway. I have to open this up and take this out to look at the songs. So I'll keep that out for now. But One of a Very Few of a Kind, it's this sprightly vaudevillian track. It's kind of cartoony. It's a lyrical tongue twister, which is just really, really fun to sing along to. And it's full of that, like, seeing that person across the room, your heart's spinning, your eyes go zoom kind of thing. I just made that up. It sounds pretty cool. But it's a super short track, which I think it makes the point, because when you are attracted to someone, that first couple seconds is all you need to be like, huh, yeah, that person's attractive. It doesn't have to be this long, drawn-out thing. I think that's kind of what the song encompasses, but it's very honest, it's full of joy, it's an instant early of Montreal classic. If you don't hear anything from this album besides that one song, that would do it for you. It's a very, very catchy song. There's a kazoo solo. I mean, come on, man. It just drives home the point of your heart bursting, being like, whoa, I really want to talk to that person. Yeah, love that track. Happy Yellow Bumblebee is a very interesting song because at this point you feel like, okay, the couple in this narrative have met. And maybe they're on their first date in this park, and a happy little bumblebee happens to be flying by. And you get this Sonder-like experience of learning the point of view of life from the bee. So it's kind of like completely removing yourself instantly in the second song to be from the point of a bumblebee going through its world of having to deal with spiders and looking for your brother and sister and having to deal with the world, and kind of zooming around, seeing this couple together for the first time. Is a really interesting outsider point of view to, like, give you an idea of looking at a relationship from a totally unexpected worldview, which I think makes for a really cool song. But it's a cool atmosphere on this track. I love the tension that builds up on this thing, having to be a little bumblebee kind of trying to survive in the wild. It definitely takes you on a journey for sure. And it's one of those things where, for me, if anything from the 60s rubbed off on Kevin Barnes, it's the ability to write about people and objects and things and make them so full of life. A very Ray Davies kind of thing, which I love. Then you get Little Viola hidden in the orchestra. And I love this one because for me, this is like almost if they had a boombox on as the couple was sitting at this park. They're sitting at this bench with a boombox on. And they're listening to the music, and the music is talking about itself. It's talking about the instruments, the people, the story. You even get to hear this wacky bit in the middle with seashells singing away, and this crazy cartoony voice, very psychedelic kind of thing. Mostly acoustic guitar and vocal on this one. There's not a whole lot of instruments on this one. But it really sounds like a boombox on their first date, or maybe like a CD player or a record, whatever they're playing. Who knows? The couple's first kiss. This song is cool. It's like a foggy carousel, these bells, these whirling hypnotic sound effects. That it's really capturing that spellbinding initial contact when you first kiss somebody for the first time that you're like really, really interested in, and kind of experiencing that. Sometimes you're at a complete loss for words, which makes sense because the track is instrumental. There's no words on it, so it's a perfect, showcase, if you will, of that feeling where it's speechless. Sing You a Love You song is the next track on here, and now we're hitting the point of the relationship where you're being vulnerable, you're saying how you feel to this person, you kind of want to say you love them, but you're really not sure if it's too early yet, and this song encapsulates that perfectly. It's super catchy. I love the drums and bass on this one. Great acoustic guitar. And easily another track in this album where if you're going to hear only a few from this record, this is definitely one of the ones to check out. Awesome song. Really love this one. Honeymoon in San Francisco comes next, and at this point in the story, I can't tell if maybe they've gotten married or they're just on a vacation to San Francisco and they're calling it a honeymoon, like a getaway. I can't tell. A lot of people are indifferent on this one. I love it. I think it's so bizarre and weird. You got that someone playing the saw in the background. Might be Julian Coster from Neutral Milk Hotel. You got this really melty, lilting, eerie effect throughout this track where Kevin's vocals are kind of dragged out and labored rather. Maybe the couple is just taking it slow. You know, they've gotten together. They're just enjoying the flow of things and kind of just feeling it out and seeing where it goes. Not rushing into anything crazy, which kind of makes sense with the overall feel of the song, which kind of drags, but I like that it drags. It's got this eeriness to it. Really cool guitar line on this thing too. The next track on here is a long title. The couple in bed together under a warm blanket, wrapped up in each other's arms, asleep. And another little sleepy moment of comfort and peace. It's instrumental, and it just sounds like comfort and peace. It just sounds like you've met someone, you're vulnerable with them, you're comfortable with them, you can let your guard down and just relax. That's what that song sounds like. And then Cutie Pie. This is where side one ends. You've gotten to the point in the relationship where pet names are a thing, and you don't ever want the relationship to end. You've hit the point where you're like, this feels so good. I never want this to stop. This is the best feeling. The cymbal swells on this thing remind me of big, heavy gulps of breath. Where you're just like, and then you kind of let it out. You're able to relax. You're able to be like, I can finally let my guard down. I'm calling this person a pet name. She's doing it to me. He's doing it to me. Whatever. And it feels so right. So that's kind of where that song takes me. Side 2 starts, and things are starting to get questionable. So I get Panda Bear, which is one of the most brilliant songs they ever wrote in the early days. A beautifully sad song with nice little touches of piano to give it a riff. Gently strummed electric guitar, which I think is the first time an electric guitar is on the album. The build-ups are catchy, and then the narrator, you can tell the narrator is shy and a little bit uncertain, but really trying their best to show that they're worth being in a relationship with and to show that it's going to be okay and we can work through this and whatever hiccup might be here, we'll move past it. But the next track, Sadness Creeping Up and Scaring Away the Couple's Happiness, kind of lays it out flat on the floor. It's this swarming myriad of moaning, groaning uncertainty, which obviously completely unsettles the narrator. So here we go with things starting to fall apart, and you get the really classic song, Please Tell Me So, which has this great catchy acoustic riff. Upbeat musically, but lyrically, very, very sad. It's basically saying, like, what happened? I'm questioning things. Things aren't going the way they should be. What am I doing here? What are we doing here? It's a song about trying to make it work, and it's a very, very catchy song. I love the little chimes, the bells in this thing. Great guitar work on it, though. Then things are really going downhill with My Darling I've Forgotten. Kevin's got his electric guitar out again. And this song is really just about realizing things are unraveling. Things might not be fixable at this point, and it's just going to keep going downhill from there. Then you get You Feel You Must Go, Don't Go. They love each other. The couple loves each other. They know they do. But no matter how much they want to make this thing work, it's not going to happen. They're going to split at some point. Then you get Just Recently Lost Something of Importance. I love this one. The horns on this one, the guitar riff, the bouncy sadness. I love the lyrics on this one. It's the relationship is done, and the lyrics are kind of like having all this stuff you want to say, but no one to say it to. Trying to understand why you feel the way you do, or how things have gotten like this. Which leads you to The Hollow Room. It's all done now. The relationship's over. You're left feeling empty and hollow and a little bit blank inside. You feel nothing, which can happen after a breakup. You kind of feel like, this huge part of you is gone now, and you're like, I gotta rebuild this. What am I doing here? It's just a sad realization that you gave your heart, you gave your all, only for it to be kicked to the curb, and then it's done. Which leads us to the last song on the album, "It's Easy to Sleep When You're Dead," which is a fantastic line. Um, and it's a song about mentioning all the really good things in life, and that if you were dead, you wouldn't be able to enjoy them. But just as much as many happy things there are in life are really hard things. So yeah, when you're, it's easy, they say the words, "It's easy to sleep when you're dead," because you can just peacefully fall asleep without all your worries, keeping you up at night. But you're also not going to be able to enjoy that cup of apple cider. You're not going to be able to enjoy laughing with your friends. You're not going to be able to watch a movie with someone. So you got to work through the hard stuff to get back to the good stuff. So it's not worth thinking about death, because that doesn't solve anything. It doesn't do anything for you. So the album ends on an optimistic note. It doesn't end as this like gloomy, "Oh man, things are super bad, it's never going to get better." It's like, things are bad right now, but just right now. Things will get better at some point. I can't let this be the end. And then it has a little bit of a reprise of the music from the couple in bed for the first time at the very end, which is a nice little touch to add that to the very end of being kind of like, things will get comfortable again. Here's the back cover. And it's interesting too. I read online, I forget who posted this, wherever I saw this a while ago, but they made a mention that there's nobody here. There's not one person is pictured on this thing. It's 2 empty swings and an empty bench. It's over. You want to get the idea that this didn't work out. What did I drop here? Dropped the download card. Here's the record. I love this label. Very cool. With the instruments on it. It's like a violin hanging from the tree and some birds there. Same thing on side 2. But yeah, like I said at the beginning of this review, which has become a lot longer than I thought it would be, this album deserves way more credit than it gets. It's definitely a stepping stone for them. It would lead to greater albums down the line. Up next was The Gay Parade, which was just like leaps and bounds 180 in terms of songcraft and storytelling and character development that would carry Montreal well into the mid-2000s as being this super amazing, deep band that can write all these characters, write all these stories, get you involved, and then it became more personal after that. So they've had so many shifts, which I think is great about them. But this album deserves so much more attention. There's so many layers to this thing. Musically, it's fantastic. It's really easy to toss this thing off as being just like a bunch of songs that go nowhere. Because upon first listen, I can understand that. But give it a chance. You'll hear the different intricate guitar work. You'll hear the bass lines. You'll hear what the drums are trying to do. Lyrically, it tells a complete story the whole way through. So lyrically, that alone is fascinating. But it's just a great album. So this thing for me easily gets a 9 out of 10. It's one of my favorite albums they ever did. It's fantastic. So if you haven't heard it, please pick it up. Please listen to it. If you're a Montreal fan who's like, joining the game these days, or if you've joined in the last couple of years and you've never heard this album because it came out before you were born, please pick it up. It's very different from what they're doing now. Very different. It's 2 different bands. But you gotta remember, people change. You're not the same person every day your entire life. Things influence you. Especially if you're creative. You're not gonna want to do the same thing twice. He's not gonna go and make another one of these. So this is pretty special. Especially because it's apparently about, the relationship he had that gave the band their name. So that's it. 9 out of 10. My name is Giggens. This has been Of Montreal, the Bedside drama, a Petite tragedy. This one came out on Kindercore Records, but it's being distributed through Polyvinyl these days. This is a 2009 vinyl reissue. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video, and bye-bye.